Hello and welcome to another episode of the YXE Sports Podcast for the week of February the 8th. Would like to welcome in everybody that is watching on Facebook on the Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar Facebook page, on the YXE Sports Podcast Facebook page. We are also live on No YXE, and of course to everybody that is watching on YouTube and everybody that is listening to the audio version of this podcast. It's Matt Morrison. Happy to be back for another week with the YXE Sports Podcast. It's beautiful outside. It's spring-like temperatures. The days are getting longer. The sun is shining. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic here in Saskatchewan and really around the world, and a lot of reasons to be optimistic if you're a Canadian soccer fan. And that's why we bring in Lee Kormish, who has taken some time out of his busy evening to join us. So, Lee, first of all, thanks so much for agreeing to do this again.
Absolutely, Matt. Happy to be here.
So we'll get to kind of what's going on that stage in a little bit, but we haven't chatted, at least publicly, since your trip to Qatar that you did. So why don't you just kind of give the listeners and viewers a little bit of a rundown of, well, first of all, why you went there, and then ultimately how that trip went?
It was great, Matt. The Qatar fan engagement team was looking for fans around the globe to come to Qatar for a tournament called the Arab Cup. The Arab Cup is a dress rehearsal for the World Cup, and Qatar wanted to bring in fans with experience from around the globe. I put in an application and I submitted a video, and I was chosen as Canada's fan leader by the Qatar team. It was an all expenses paid trip. They wined us, dined us. They showed us the city of Doha. They took us to the stadium. We did a number of activities, and then they got feedback from us from what we experience and what we suggest and what needs to be improved before the World Cup next year. Or sorry, now this year.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that the last time we spoke was, I believe it was end of November, early December, because that's when your trip was. It seems so long ago, but it's hard to believe that the World Cup is only a few short months away. You were the lone Canadian that went. When we last spoke, you didn't even think that an American was going. So for just kind of take me through what that was like to be the lone Canadian, to be able to have that experience.
So our region is CONCACAF, which includes North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And there was only two countries represented from our region at the Qatar fan rally. And there was a couple fans from Mexico and then myself from Canada. So being not only from Canada, but representing our region, the lone Canadian was absolutely special to bring the maple leaf and to wear it proudly. They were all excited to meet me. And now that Canada's actually competitive in the world's game, it was a very exciting time. So, you look at Qatar and it's just beautiful weather in the month of November. So we were wearing shorts and t-shirts, and it was just the nicest summer days that we have here in June and July. It was there the entire 2 weeks I was in Qatar.
Well, you could stop bragging, but I guess I bet you probably wish that you would have went a couple of weeks ago when we had that massive cold snap there in the middle towards the end of January. So you kind of talk, and I don't know if you can speak about this or not, but you've been to many World Cups before. You were there to help make recommendations on how to make the 2022 World Cup, be one of the best or the best yet. What do you kind of see, now that you've been to the venue, you've been to the country that's hosting it? What are kind of your expectations for the 2022 World Cup, and where's that going to kind of line up with the World Cups you've been a part of in the past?
Being in Russia, Brazil, Germany, and South Africa, much larger countries than Qatar, this one's going to be special because the city of Doha, which is just under 3 million population, is essentially the entire country of Qatar. It's such a tiny landmass. You can fit 56 Qatars in the province of Saskatchewan. When you look at the metro map, it was spectacular to look at a single metro map, 3 lines, and have 8 stadiums on the metro map when you're sitting on the little train. There's only 60 kilometers in between the furthest stadium from north to south. So you've got 8 stadiums essentially in one city. And I went to 7 of the 8. The one was still under construction. but they're all world class. The minimum was 40,000, the maximum is 80,000. So to have Qatar's trying to build a sports mecca in the desert. And I was there in the middle of the progress. They've got Formula One, they've got massive tennis tournaments. They're now getting into golf. So they're creating just this sports mecca in the middle of the Middle East. It's pretty spectacular to see it with my own eyes.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's talk about a little bit of 2022 World Cup, specifically how it relates to the Canadian national team. You look at the CONCACAF standings. Canada is in first, 7 wins, 4 draws. They have scored the most goals out of any team in the tournament. I can't remember what the exact number is. I think it's 19 or 14 or something like that. What is it? They're on a 5-game winning streak. They beat the USA 2-0 on January 30th. And then they beat Honduras back on January the 27th. So why don't you just give us a little bit of an update in terms of where Canada stands and what's kind of left for them to have to actually qualify for the World Cup itself?
This is something I could talk about all day. I've been a Canadian sports fan, a Canadian soccer fan since World Cup in 1994 when it was in the United States. So you're looking at 28 years of being there were some very dark times. I experienced the darkest times of Canadian soccer for the better part of 2+ decades. Now we've got this team that has just so quickly turned around an entire program. Our coach, John Herdman, has taken a group of players and given them a winning mentality that has just changed everything on the field. They're good, and you've got players that are now playing in the biggest clubs around the world that are coming back to represent our country. Many people say that Canada soccer is the biggest story from this World Cup qualifying campaign, and I couldn't agree more. If you go back, Matt, in this final round, the octagonal stage, we're in first place of Mexico, USA, but we had to play 6 games. We were in the very beginning stage where the smallest teams start out. So we actually played 6 games before this stage. When we won our last game against El Salvador 2-0, that was the second goal was our 50th goal in the entire World Cup qualifying campaign. If you go to the very beginning, we've scored 50 goals. We've only allowed 6. We're undefeated in 16 matches. We have gone from the 76th ranking to now we're going to be ranked 33rd in the world. It is absolutely incredible what this team has done and captured the imagination of soccer fans, not only in Canada, but this team is talked about around the world right now.
Yeah, and I guess that's right. I mean, the exposure that Canada is getting on the national stage in the past, they've probably got that exposure, but for much different reasons, right? I don't want to go as far to say, that it was a laughing stock, but I'm sure you know that they just wasn't much of a threat, right? A few years ago. When you look at the turnaround over the past few years that this team has, gone through, this program has gone through, you look at the turnaround. In your opinion, what are kind of some of the reasons for the turnaround and the success that they're starting to see?
They asked this exact question to our goalkeeper, Milan Borjan, who plays at Red Star Belgrade in Serbia and is a Serbian-born player that has Canada, that has a Canadian family, so he's able to play for Team Canada. They asked him these exact questions, and he said, I only have 2 words, John Herdman. And John Herdman, as you know, was the women's coach and turned that program from a round of 16 quarterfinal team into a contender and winning 2 Olympic bronzes in a row. And then he left for the men's team. And the secret to what he says is a lot of soccer players can come with a bit of an individual ego when they represent their national team. And he laid down the law very early. He had individual hour-long plus conversations with each of the players. And his big message was that the individual player about you ends now. You're a part of this team. You're a part of this program. And we're going to be a team that is winning. We're going to be a team that I'm going to ask you what you need to do, and you're going to step on that field. And as a unit, we're going to start to beat these better teams. in our region, and we're going to qualify for Qatar. He's had his sights set on Qatar since he took the job over, and now we're 99.9% there. It's nearly a mathematical impossibility for us not to qualify. It's just a matter of playing out the last couple games just to cinch it.
Yeah, I want to go back to that point about the World Cup qualifying in just a little bit, but you kind of bring up how, Coach Herdman has done this fantastic things with these fantastic things with this group. Well, the game against USA and Honduras, they didn't have arguably one of their best players, right? I don't know if you can kind of speak to that, to just the character of this program to pull off those victories without one of their stars.
I'm glad you brought that up, because going into this last window, we had 3 very difficult games on the road in Honduras, at home to USA, and then on the road to El Salvador. And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Alphonso Davies isn't playing. This team's going to get a wake-up call." They're all about Alphonso Davies. If he's not playing, they can't win. Well, not only was our best player, Alphonso Davies, not playing, but our best midfielder, Stefan Estequio, which a lot of people may not know his name, but he plays with he just signed a big deal with FC Porto of Portugal, one of the biggest Portugal clubs. So we had essentially our 2 best players, and we were able to go into Honduras, where we haven't won since 1985, and win 2-0. And then we came home and beat the United States, which we haven't beaten in World Cup qualifying since 1980. And then we went into El Salvador, where we haven't won in over 20 years, and we beat them 2-0. We won all 3 games. We got 9 points, 3 shutouts without Alphonso Davies. And that, now no one can say this is a team about Davies. And the local, us fans that are hardcore, we knew that, but now the rest of the world and the people who are hard on the team and very critical, they can't say we're just the Alphonso Davies team anymore.
We do have a question that for you that has come in via YouTube, and it is, where do you think Canada's next home is going to be played at? Which city? I don't know if you have some intel into that, or maybe just your own personal opinion, but I'll leave you to answer that one.
So we've got 1 home game left, and it's against Jamaica. So we play on the road in San Jose, Costa Rica, and that's where I think we're going to clinch our berth for the World Cup, because we only need a tie in that game. Or if the U.S. loses and Panama loses, there's a combination there where it's very likelihood that we're going to qualify on March 24th in Costa Rica. The home game is against Jamaica, and I see that as being a celebration for this team. A celebration that's just going to be a sellout. It's going to be phenomenal. Some people are saying it's going to be in Vancouver, BC. Some people are going to say it's in Toronto. Some people are going to want it in Montreal. What John Herdman and our president, Nick Bontes, and the group of them do is they have about an 8-stadium list that they go through, and they try to figure out where is the best place that we're going to be able to win these games. If I had to guess, I would think that because we're going to be qualified at that point, now they do have to list where where that game is a lot earlier. So we can't wait until, San Jose, Costa Rica to qualify and then they name that home game. I'm guessing that it's going to be in Toronto at BMO Field because that's kind of been listed as Canada's home stadium. But because it's going to be a celebration of us actually being qualified, my guess is it's going to be BMO, but I wouldn't put it past John Herdman to choose somewhere else.
Well, there you go. Of course, we are live for another episode of the YXE Sports Podcast, as we are every single week. And even though we are not at Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar, they are still the same great sponsor. There's a lot of stuff going on in the sporting world, soccer included. The Super Bowl, undoubtedly one of the biggest events of the year, is this upcoming Sunday, February the 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. Head on down to Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar to watch the Rams walk all over the Cincinnati Bengals. And you can do that at the comfort of Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar on the corner of Circle and Idlewild. So, Lee, you kind of brought up that it's basically all but done that Canada has qualified. They just kind of, more so formalities and, still a little bit of work to do. They're probably going to qualify for the World Cup, which would be the first time since 1986. I don't know, if you've put any thought into this, but on the World Cup stage, how do you kind of see Canada lining up against some of these other powerhouses?
Well, Matt, just before we go on to that, you mentioned Rams walking all over the Bengals. I'm going to disagree with you there.
I think Doyle does too, but
I'm a huge Saints fan, and I'm upset because the Rams lost to the 49ers, which took out a very good Saints defensive team. Plus, the Rams had that bogus non-penalty call a few years ago that kept the Saints and Drew Brees out of the Super Bowl. So I'm cheering for the Bengals. But beside that, how are we going to rank against the better teams? This is the next big question: is how are we going to play against a European team? How are we going to play against an African team? How are we going to play against a South American team? We've been tested at the local region, and we have passed every test that has come our way. We want to see this team against the big teams. We want to bring on an Argentina or an England at the World Cup. We're so excited to see what teams we're going to actually play. We're going to have to set up some friendlies before the World Cup in November, because you can't go in blind against these big teams at the World Cup and hope we're just going to find instant success at the World Cup. So you'll watch. Canada will set up some friendlies, and I hope there's a game against a Chile or a Colombia. I hope there's a game against a Ghana, a Cameroon, and I hope there's a couple friendlies set up maybe against maybe a Portugal, maybe a Germany or France, even leading up to the tournament, to face some big teams before we go in. I really think that we're going to be labeled as a dark horse, and I think we're going to contend to get out of that group stage. I think we're just that good. When you have players that are playing all over the world and they're just that good, and when they come to the national team, put on their jersey, and they're all performing as a unit, we're like a mini army. And we're gaining soccer fans across the country. It blows me away how many new soccer fans. I think the country of Canada likes winners. You see, we get on board with winners. When Tiger Woods wins, oh my goodness, we're into golf. When Andreescu wins, we're all excited about tennis. And now it's Canada men's soccer. Canada likes winners, and we're gaining an entire nation behind this team. So I think we're going to do fairly well. It's exciting to think that we're not just happy to be there. John Herdman and the team is going to play ball, and that's exciting.
You're going there to win, right? I mean, that's the mindset that you got to have, right? And whatever happens, but you got to have the mindset that you're going there to win. You brought up an interesting point about how Canada loves to get behind winners. Well, a couple of years ago when the Raptors went on that big NBA championship run, we saw basketball numbers skyrocket in the country. On a more local note, when the Saskatchewan Rush moved to Saskatoon, we saw lacrosse numbers go up in the province. Do you kind of foresee the same sort of thing happening here with soccer across the country? I mean, we kind of already saw it with the way that the women performed at the Summer Olympics, but do you think that this has just done wonders for the momentum of soccer, minor soccer across the country?
I think what you're gonna see right now is an inspiration of a lot of youth players, boys and girls, that have seen our girls team win a gold medal, see our boys team going to qualify for the World Cup. I think you're going to see this next generation coming up and saying, wow, my hero is Alphonso Davies. And Alphonso Davies just turned 21 or 22. Like, he's in his early 20s. And with Canada hosting the World Cup in 2026, we've got a golden generation for the next 5 to 7 years to really enjoy. And when Alphonso Davies gets in his later 20s and early 30s, and I think we're going to see young players in their 19, 20 coming onto the team and being like, wow, I saw Alphonso Davies at the World Cup in 2022, and that made me fall in love with the game. So I think you're going to see a real inspiration of youth, and you're going to get your casual sports fans, a lot of casual sports fans finally watching soccer for the first time, some of them. When the World Cup is on TV in every channel in November, I think that's when you're going to really see the entire country pay attention.
And the reason that it is in November for 2022 is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time we chatted, because it gets so hot there right? Because the World Cup's normally in July, right? I think that there was some talk about that's why it was in November or something like that, but I could be totally wrong on that.
Yeah, let me touch on that really quick.
Sure.
That was the biggest logistics issue when Qatar had put in their bid, and when they were successful in winning their bid. Could it be a summer World Cup, or would it have to be a winter World Cup? That I talked to a lot of locals, and in June, July, when the World Cup is, it's plus 45 to 55 degrees. It is painful to be outside. They built the 7 new soccer stadiums, all with air conditioning to battle that heat. But your average temperature in November, December is perfect summer temperature. It was absolutely gorgeous when I was there in late November, early December. So the air conditioning units actually came on in the stadium during our first game there, and it was actually chilly that night. We had to put on our sweaters. So with all the problem is that all the leagues have summers off. So the English Premier League, the German Bundesliga, all the leagues around the world had to make shifts to their schedule to accommodate the November, December World Cup, which was the biggest logistics issue. I'm glad they were able to find a way.
We got one more question here before we let you go, but the question is, do you see Herdman bringing in some new players, and which ones, especially if Davies is not healthy yet? There's another comment there for the games in March. So where do you kind of see that standing?
What you're going to see in March is you're going to see Herdman do everything he can to win these games. I'll give you some inside information here. Right now, when the World Cup is drawn, we're put into pots. We're put into 4 pots, pot 1, 2, 3, and 4. And currently Canada sits in pot 4, which means we're going to play 3 teams that are higher ranked than us. Herdman will do everything in his power to get us into pot 3. He wants to win those last 3 games. I could see him maybe bringing in a little bit of new players, but I don't know if they're going to play that much at the end of March, because he's going to do everything to win. If we get to pot 3, which is we need to by the end of March, the World Cup draw is April 3rd, and that you'll see the new rankings come out. And if we're in pot 3, we've got a Nations League tournament this summer, and that's where you're going to see some new players. This is the neat thing about Canada Soccer. You've got a young kid named Flores who's been talked about a lot. You've got Stefan Mitrovic, who's made some headlines. We've got a lot of younger talent. I've never seen such depth in a Canadian soccer team in my life. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of new faces crack that lineup in March. But at the Nations League, John Herdman will be able to experiment a little bit, and that'll happen. He'll do some experimenting in June, July before the tournament. So that's where things stand right now.
We got a few minutes left, so why don't you maybe just give us an update? And maybe there's no update at all, but on the proposed team that could be coming to Saskatoon. I'm not sure if things are status quo there or not, but why don't you kind of just fill us in with any new information you may have, if that's even such a thing?
Things have been very quiet at the stadium and the pro team that's potentially coming to Saskatoon, and a lot of that reason is because of the COVID right now, Matt. The owner Al Simpson is still full intentions on getting a team here, getting a stadium built. Can you imagine a 5,500 seat soccer stadium in Saskatoon? People underestimate the power of the sport in this city, in our province, and in this country. But I think that's going to change over the next decade. It has been shifting a little bit, but still a lot of people underestimate what this sport can do. We rave on our multiculturalism and diversity. It's the sport of soccer that brings that together, that brings people under all with the same purpose. You can throw a ball on the field and everywhere in the world, people know what to do with it. There's just a common mentality when it comes to this game, which is really cool. So I want that stadium here. We're on course. I've told people we're on track, but it's a longer track, and we've got some convincing to do here at the city level. So that I don't have much news for you that but there is a stadium rendering, and I haven't seen it yet. No one's seen it but the owner himself, and of course the group that's been working on it. But there is a stadium rendering, and we're hoping that's unveiled in March sometime, but not quite sure when that will happen.
Well, there you go. Updates from Lee Kormish in terms of all things soccer on the global stage, on the Canadian stage, and on the local stage. Lee, Canada's next game is March 24th. Is that correct?
You betcha. In Costa Rica, a place we haven't won in forever.
Go. Well, hey, there's no better time like the present, right? So March 24th is Canada's next game. Lee Kormish, thanks so much for hopping on here.
You betcha. Thanks, Matt.
All right, that has been another episode of the YXE Sports Podcast. So a big thanks to everybody for tuning in this past week. And we are going to be here next week. Don't forget, the Super Bowl is next Sunday, or this upcoming Sunday, depending on whichever day you look at it. Doyle says, let's go Bengals. Monty says, go LA Rams, go. Doyle once again says, let's go Bengals. I'm on the Rams bandwagon, Doyle. I got to be honest with you. You know, you guys had a good season to this point. Anyways, that wraps things up for me for this week's episode of the YXE Sports Podcast. Doyle's going to disown me, but that's okay. We will chat next week. Until then, stay safe.